Have you ever been told you don't belong anywhere? That you're too much of one thing and not enough of another? If you're watching this and you've ever felt like an outsider in your own skin, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Because Luna Park knew exactly what that felt like, and tonight, everything was about to change. The rain hammered against the windows of Kim's translation services as Luna finished her last client call of the day. 26 years old and fluent in 4 languages, yet she still felt like she was speaking a foreign tongue in her own life. She gathered her things slowly, dreading the walk home through Seattle's Koreatown. The same route she'd taken for 3 years, past the same shopkeepers who whispered behind her back, past the same groups of teenagers who snickered at her appearance. Luna caught her reflection in the dark window. Half Korean features inherited from her grandmother, but those eyes. Those impossible, striking blue eyes that marked her as different in every space she entered. Too Asian for the white neighborhoods where she'd grown up, too white for the Korean community where she now worked. Her grandmother's eyes, according to family photos, though no one talked much about Halmoni anymore. She locked the office door and stepped into the October drizzle. Koreatown came alive at night, neon signs reflecting in puddles, the smell of kimchi and grilled meat drifting from restaurants. Luna pulled her hood up and walked quickly, eyes down. She'd learned long ago that making eye contact only invited comments. The whispers started before she'd gone 2 blocks. A group of Korean women outside the beauty supply store, their voices carrying despite the rain. Luna didn't need to speak Korean to understand the tone, the sideways glances. She'd been hearing variations of the same conversation her entire life. Strange-looking girl. Mixed blood. Those unnatural eyes. Luna's chest tightened with familiar shame. Her grandmother had told her stories when she was little, fairy tales about blue-eyed women being lucky charms for ancient Korean warriors. But Halmoni had died when Luna was 12, taking those comforting stories with her. What remained was the harsh reality of not fitting anywhere. She turned down Pine Street, taking the shortcut through the alley that would get her home faster. The rain was coming down harder now, and she was already soaked through her thin jacket. This part of the city was quieter, darker, with fewer people around to stare at her eyes and whisper. That's when she heard the voices. Luna stopped walking, pressing herself against the brick wall of a restaurant. The voices were angry, speaking rapid Korean peppered with English curse words. She peered around the corner and felt her blood freeze. 6 men faced off in the narrow alley behind the Golden Dragon restaurant. 3 wore expensive suits despite the rain, their posture radiating controlled violence. The other 3 looked younger, hungrier, with the desperate edge of people with nothing to lose. Luna recognized the markings on their jackets. Snake Brotherhood. Her clients at the translation office had whispered about them. The new gang, trying to muscle in on established territory. I told you this was our corner now, one of the younger men said, his English heavily accented. Your time is finished, old man. The man he addressed was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with broad shoulders and perfectly styled black hair that somehow still looked immaculate despite the rain. Even in the dim light, Luna could see the expensive cut of his suit, the way the other men deferred to him. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. You misunderstand the situation, he said quietly. This territory belongs to the Warang. It has for 20 years. You're welcome to conduct business elsewhere. The younger man laughed, but there was no humor in it. 20 years of what? Taking protection money from families? We offer something better. Real opportunity. The older man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Luna found herself holding her breath. She should run. She knew that. This was exactly the kind of situation her grandmother had warned her about, the kind of violence that happened in the shadows of their community. But she couldn't move. Something about the older man held her attention. Despite the obvious danger, despite being outnumbered, he seemed utterly composed. Like he was in complete control of the situation. That's when everything went wrong. The conversation erupted into violence so quickly Luna barely had time to register what was happening. The younger men moved first, pulling weapons, but the older man and his companions were faster. The sound of gunfire echoed off the alley walls, sharp cracks that made Luna's ears ring. She pressed harder against the brick wall, trying to make herself invisible, but her foot slipped on the wet pavement. The small sound might as well have been a gunshot in the sudden silence that followed the confrontation. Every eye in the alley turned toward her hiding spot. Luna's mind went completely blank with terror. She was frozen, exposed, a witness to whatever had just happened. The younger men were on the ground, and she couldn't tell if they were dead or unconscious. Blood mixed with rainwater in the alley. The older man stepped toward her, and Luna finally found the ability to move. She ran. Her sneakers slipped on the wet pavement as she sprinted down the alley, but she could hear footsteps behind her. Heavy, measured, gaining ground. She'd always been fast, but whoever was chasing her was faster. A hand caught her wrist just as she reached the mouth of the alley, spinning her around with surprising gentleness. Luna found herself face to face with the man from the confrontation, and this close, she could see his features clearly. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things were beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, and eyes so dark they were almost black in the dim light. But it was his expression that stopped her struggles. He wasn't looking at her with the violence she'd just witnessed. He was looking at her with something like wonder. "Your eyes," he said softly, his English perfect despite the slight accent. "They're blue." Luna stared at him, too terrified to speak. Up close, she could see the expensive fabric of his suit, the way his hair was styled with precision, the small scar above his left eyebrow. Everything about him radiated power and control, but his voice when he spoke to her was almost reverent. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, still holding her wrist, but so gently she barely felt it. "What's your name?" "Luna," she whispered, then immediately regretted giving him any information. "Luna," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "I'm Miho. Young Miho. You saw what happened back there." It wasn't a question. Luna nodded, still unable to find her voice. She was soaked through, shivering from cold and fear, but something in his tone made her feel like she wasn't in immediate danger. "I can't let you leave," he said, and her terror spiked again. "But not for the reason you think. The men we just dealt with, they have friends. If they know you witnessed this, they'll come for you." Luna finally found her voice. "I won't tell anyone. I promise. I just want to go home." Miho studied her face for a long moment, and she had the strange sensation that he was seeing something in her that others missed. Something beyond her mixed features and unusual eyes. "Home isn't safe for you anymore," he said finally, "but I can keep you safe. Will you trust me?" Luna looked into his dark eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. This man was clearly dangerous, clearly involved in things she didn't understand. But for the first time in her life, someone was looking at her like she was precious instead of strange. The rain continued to fall around them as Luna made the decision that would change everything. She nodded. Miho's smile was gentle, transforming his entire face. "Good," he said. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He led her to a black sedan parked at the end of the alley, opening the passenger door for her with old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with what she'd just witnessed. As they drove through the neon-lit streets of Koreatown, Luna caught glimpses of his profile in the passing lights. She'd spent her entire life feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. But sitting in this car next to this dangerous, beautiful man who looked at her blue eyes like they were something miraculous, Luna felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt chosen. Luna woke to the smell of jasmine tea and something else, something warm and comforting that reminded her of childhood. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The bed beneath her was the softest thing she'd ever slept on, covered in silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Then the memories came flooding back. The alley, the violence, Miho's dark eyes studying her face like she was something precious and rare. She sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. The room was elegant in a way that spoke of old money and careful taste. Traditional Korean furniture mixed with modern luxury, paintings that looked like they belonged in museums. Through the windows, she could see a private garden with carefully tended trees and a small pond. This definitely wasn't her studio apartment in Capitol Hill. The door opened quietly, and a small elderly woman entered carrying a tray. She had to be in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore a traditional hanbok in deep blue silk, and when she saw Luna was awake, her face broke into a warm smile. "You're awake, child," the woman said in accented English, setting the tray down on the bedside table. "I brought you tea and some rice porridge. You must be hungry." Luna pulled the covers up to her chin, suddenly aware that someone had changed her out of her wet clothes and into soft pajamas she didn't recognize. Thank you, but I should probably go. I don't want to impose. The elderly woman laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Impose? Child, you're exactly where you need to be. I'm Kim Halmoni, Miho's grandmother. And you, she said, settling into a chair beside the bed with surprising grace, are the blue-eyed girl my grandson couldn't stop talking about. Luna felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm Luna, Luna Park, and I think there's been some kind of mistake. Halmoni's eyes twinkled. No mistake. Miho told me what happened last night. He also told me about your eyes. May I see them properly? Luna looked up, meeting the older woman's gaze directly. Halmoni gasped softly, reaching out to cup Luna's face with weathered hands. Extraordinary, she whispered, just like the old stories. Blue-eyed women, protectors of warriors, bringers of fortune. My great-grandmother used to tell tales of such women in the old country. Luna pulled back gently. Those are just stories, Mrs. Kim. My grandmother used to tell me similar tales, but they're not real. Halmoni smiled mysteriously. Perhaps, perhaps not. But the Warang believe in such things. They've needed luck lately. Before Luna could ask what that meant, the door opened again. Miho entered, and Luna's breath caught in her throat. In daylight, wearing casual clothes instead of the bloodstained suit, he was even more striking. Dark jeans and a simple black sweater couldn't hide the power in his build, but they made him seem more approachable somehow. You're awake, he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice. How do you feel? Confused, Luna admitted. And grateful, but I really should go home. Miho exchanged a look with his grandmother before sitting on the edge of the bed. That's what I need to talk to you about. The men from last night, they were Snake Brotherhood, a new organization trying to take over our territory. Our territory? Luna asked. Miho was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. My family has protected this community for 3 generations. We're called the Warang, after the ancient Korean warriors. We handle problems the police can't or won't touch. You mean you're criminals, Luna said bluntly. We're protectors, Halmoni corrected gently. When gangs threaten shop owners, when human traffickers prey on young girls, when the system fails our people, we step in. Luna studied Miho's face. There was no defensiveness there, no attempt to justify or explain away what she'd witnessed. Just calm honesty. I won't lie to you, he said. What we do isn't always legal, but it's necessary. And now you're part of it, whether you want to be or not. What do you mean? The Snake Brotherhood saw you. They know you witnessed what happened. They'll assume you can identify them to the police, or worse, to us. Your life is in danger. Luna felt her chest tighten with fear. For how long? Miho's jaw clenched slightly. Until we eliminate the threat completely. Halmoni placed a gentle hand on Luna's arm. You'll be safe here, child. This house has been in our family for 60 years. No one has ever been harmed within these walls. Luna looked between them, trying to process what they were telling her. She was essentially a prisoner, but the most comfortable prisoner in history. And despite everything, despite the danger and the uncertainty, she felt safer than she had in years. There's something else, Miho said, and his tone made Luna look up sharply. The council wants to meet you. The council? The Warang elders. They make decisions for the organization. Halmoni told them about your eyes, about the old stories. They're interested. The way he said interested made Luna's stomach drop. What kind of interested? Before Miho could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. They're here. Within minutes, Luna found herself sitting in an elegant living room, facing 5 elderly Korean men in expensive suits. They spoke in rapid Korean, occasionally glancing at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that made her deeply uncomfortable. Miho translated quietly. They want to know about your family, your heritage. My grandmother was Korean, Luna said carefully. Kim Maylin. She came to America in the 1950s. The oldest man, his hair completely white, leaned forward and spoke directly to Luna in English. The gods have sent you to us in our hour of need, he said solemnly. You will stay with us. You will bring the Warang good fortune in our war. It wasn't a request. Luna felt panic rise in her throat. I appreciate the hospitality, but I'm not anyone's lucky charm. I'm just a translator who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You underestimate yourself, the elders said. Already, Your presence has changed things. Miho defeated 6 Snake Brotherhood members last night instead of the usual 3 or 4. This is not coincidence. Luna looked at Miho desperately. 6? You said there were 3. Miho's expression was unreadable. More arrived after you ran. They're all gone now. The casual way he said it made Luna's blood run cold. What did that mean, gone? The council members continued their discussion in Korean, clearly making plans that involved her. Luna caught enough words to understand they were talking about protection, about keeping her close, about using her presence to their advantage. Enough, Miho said sharply in Korean, then switched to English. The council has made their decision. You'll stay here under our protection. In return, you'll translate when needed and be present during important operations. Be present, Luna repeated. Like a mascot. Like family, Halmoni corrected firmly. The Warang take care of their own. After the council left, Miho found Luna in the garden, staring at the koi pond. She'd changed into clothes that had been provided for her. Simple, but well-made things that fit perfectly despite no one asking her size. I know this isn't what you wanted, he said quietly, sitting beside her on the stone bench. What I wanted was to go home and pretend last night never happened, Luna said. Now I'm apparently some kind of mystical good luck charm for a Korean mafia family. The Warang aren't mafia, Miho said. We don't deal drugs. We don't traffic people. We don't prey on the innocent. We protect our community by killing people when necessary, he said without flinching. My parents were killed by the Jade Serpents when I was 15, shot down in the street like dogs because they refused to pay protection money for their restaurant. The police did nothing. Said it was gang violence, not their problem. Luna turned to look at him. The pain in his voice was carefully controlled, but it was there. Halmoni took me in, he continued. Raised me to understand that sometimes the only way to protect good people is to eliminate bad ones. The Snake Brotherhood is just the latest group trying to terrorize families who just want to make an honest living. Luna was quiet for a long moment, watching the fish move lazily through the water. And you think my eyes will somehow help you in this war? Miho was quiet so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, I think you're the first person in my life who's looked at me like I might be worth saving instead of fearing. Their eyes met and held. Luna felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. This man, this dangerous, beautiful man, looked at her like she was exactly what he'd been searching for his entire life. The spell was broken by Miho's phone ringing. He answered in Korean, his expression growing increasingly grim. What is it? Luna asked when he hung up. They found this place, he said quietly. We need to move. Now. As if summoned by his words, Luna could hear cars pulling up outside, doors slamming, urgent voices. Miho stood and offered her his hand. Trust me? He asked, looking into his dark eyes, feeling the strength and certainty in his outstretched hand. Luna made her choice. She took his hand and let him lead her toward whatever came next, knowing that her old life was gone forever. Maybe it was time for a new one. The new safe house was nothing like Luna had expected from a criminal organization. Located in a converted warehouse in Georgetown, it felt more like a community center than a hideout. Families moved through the spacious main area, children playing while their parents worked at computer stations or gathered around conference tables discussing what sounded like legitimate business. Luna sat at a corner desk, translating financial documents from Korean to English, trying to process what she was seeing. These weren't the hardened criminals she'd imagined. There was an elderly woman teaching a group of teenagers traditional calligraphy. A young mother nursed her baby while reviewing what looked like college textbooks. Men in expensive suits sat beside teenagers in worn sneakers, all of them treated with equal respect. The documents in front of her painted an even more complex picture. Import licenses for a legitimate shipping company. Charitable donations to local schools. Investment portfolios that supported Korean-owned businesses throughout Seattle. Mixed in were other papers, ones that made her hands shake slightly. Security contracts that were clearly protection services. Financial records that showed money flowing to families whose breadwinners had been killed or injured in gang conflicts. This wasn't simple criminality. This was a shadow government, providing services and protection that the official system couldn't or wouldn't offer. Miho appeared beside her desk, moving with that silent grace that still startled her. How are you settling in? He asked quietly. Your filing system needs work, Luna said, holding up a stack of papers. But your Korean translator before me was terrible. Half of these contracts have errors that could get you in serious legal trouble. Miho smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. That's why we need you. The counsel was right. You're already proving valuable. Luna looked around the bustling room. This isn't what I expected from organized crime. What did you expect? Men in dark rooms planning murders, I guess. Not families doing homework together. Miho followed her gaze to where a grandfather was helping his grandson with math, while his daughter-in-law worked on her laptop. The Warring has always been about family first. We take care of our own, protect what matters. Sometimes that requires violence, but that's not who we are at our core. A young man approached their table, maybe 22 or 23, with the lean build of someone who'd learned to fight on the streets. He spoke to Miho in rapid Korean, gesturing toward the main entrance. What's wrong? Luna asked, recognizing the tension in both men's voices. Jean needs to go handle a situation with the Snake Brotherhood. They're pressuring shop owners on Aurora Avenue, demanding protection money. Luna watched as Jean checked the weapon concealed under his jacket, his young face set with grim determination. How old is he? 24. Lost his father to the Jade Serpents 3 years ago. His mother runs a small restaurant that barely breaks even, but the Warring makes sure she never has to worry about rent or utilities. The casual way Miho spoke about taking care of families made something twist in Luna's chest. Growing up, she'd moved through the world alone, always the outsider, never belonging to any group that would claim her unconditionally. Here, belonging seemed to be the foundation of everything. After Jean left, Miho turned to Luna with an expression she was learning to recognize. It meant he was about to ask something of her that she might not like. I want to teach you some basic self-defense, he said. Just in case. In case of what? In case I'm not there to protect you. Luna wanted to argue, to insist she was fine, but the memory of her terror in the alley was still fresh. Okay, she said, but I should warn you, I'm not particularly coordinated. An hour later, Luna discovered that Miho was a patient teacher, which was fortunate because she was indeed terrible at self-defense. They worked in a converted gym on the warehouse's upper level, mats covering the concrete floor, mirrors reflecting their movements. No, like this, Miho said for the 4th time, positioning himself behind her to adjust her stance. His hands on her waist were warm, gentle but firm, and Luna found herself distracted by his proximity. If someone grabs you from behind, you need to drop your center of gravity and twist. His body pressed against hers as he demonstrated the movement, and Luna felt her concentration scatter completely. She could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his skin, sense the controlled strength in his movements. Are you paying attention? He asked, his voice amused. Luna turned in his arms and found herself face to face with him, close enough to count his eyelashes. Absolutely not, she admitted. Miho's dark eyes studied her face, and she saw something shift in his expression, something that made her breath catch in her throat. Luna, he said quietly, his hands still resting on her waist. Yes, I need you to know something. Being here, being part of this world, it's dangerous in ways you don't understand yet. If you want to leave, if this is too much, I'll arrange safe passage out of the city. New identity, fresh start, whatever you need. Luna looked into his eyes and saw something she recognized. The careful distance of someone who'd learned not to hope for things that seemed too good to be true. What if I don't want to leave? She asked. Then I need to know why. Luna took a shaky breath. I've spent my entire life not belonging anywhere. Too Korean for white spaces, too white for Korean spaces. Always the weird girl with the strange eyes. But here, she gestured around them. Here people look at me like I'm supposed to be here. Miho's expression softened. You were supposed to be here. How can you be so sure? Because I've been waiting for you my entire life, and I didn't even know it. They were moving closer together, drawn by some invisible force, when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. An alarm started blaring, and Luna could hear shouting from downstairs. Stay behind me, Miho said sharply, all traces of softness gone from his voice. He moved toward the stairwell with fluid precision, and Luna followed, her heart hammering against her ribs. The main floor was chaos. Families were being evacuated through a back entrance while armed Warang members took positions at windows and doorways. Jean ran up to them, his face grim. 20 Snake Brotherhood, he reported in English, probably for Luna's benefit. Armed, surrounding the building. They want the girl. Luna felt ice flood her veins. They're here for me. They think you're our weak point, Miho said, but his tone suggested they were very wrong about that. How long until backup arrives? 10 minutes, Jean replied. That's too long. Miho turned to Luna, his expression intense. I need you to go with Mrs. Chun to the safe room. Stay there until this is over. What about you? I'll be handling the situation. Luna grabbed his arm before he could walk away. Don't do anything stupid just to protect me. Miho's smile was sharp and dangerous. Protecting you isn't stupid. It's the only thing that matters. The next few minutes passed in a blur of gunfire and shouted orders. Luna huddled in the reinforced safe room with 3 other women and 2 small children, listening to the sounds of battle overhead. Mrs. Chun, a woman in her 50s who'd been nothing but kind to Luna, held her hand and murmured soothing words in Korean. When the shooting stopped, the silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Then Miho's voice called through the door, low and reassuring. It's over. You can come out. Luna emerged to find the main floor damaged but intact. Several windows were shot out, and there were bullet holes in the walls, but no Warang members seemed seriously injured. Miho stood near the entrance, blood on his shirt sleeve, but moving normally. You're hurt, Luna said, reaching toward the blood stain. It's not mine, he said quietly, catching her hand. Are you all right? Luna looked around at the aftermath of violence, at the families already beginning to clean up and repair, at the man in front of her who'd risked his life to keep her safe. For the first time in her adult life, she was exactly where she needed to be. I'm perfect, she said, and meant it. Miho studied her face for a long moment. The safe house is compromised. We'll need to relocate again. Where? My place, he said. My private penthouse. No one knows about it except family. As they prepared to leave, Luna took one last look around the warehouse that had briefly felt like home. She was learning that home wasn't a place with the Warang. It was wherever the family gathered, wherever they chose to protect and care for each other. And increasingly, it was wherever Miho was. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she followed him toward whatever came next, Luna felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Miho's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a sleek building in Belltown, with views of Elliott Bay that took Luna's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the living space, letting in morning light that made the hardwood floors glow like honey. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials, but somehow it felt warm rather than cold. More surprising was how easily they fell into domestic routines. Miho cooked breakfast while Luna sorted through intelligence reports at the kitchen island, translating intercepted communications between Snake Brotherhood cells. He moved around the kitchen with the same controlled grace he brought to everything else, but watching him flip eggs and brew coffee felt intimately normal in a way that made Luna's chest tight with unfamiliar emotion. You don't have to do this, she said, watching him plate perfectly prepared Korean-style eggs with rice. I can make my own breakfast. I like taking care of you, he said simply, setting the plate in front of her. It's not obligation. It's choice. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, made something warm unfurl in Luna's stomach. She'd spent her entire adult life fiercely independent, never wanting to rely on anyone who might decide she wasn't worth the effort. But there was something different about Miho's care. It didn't come with conditions or expectations. It just was. After breakfast, Miho's inner circle arrived for their daily briefing. Luna had met them briefly during the warehouse evacuation, but seeing them in action was different. Jean, the young man who'd lost his father, had a strategic mind that impressed her. Sujin, a woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and expensive clothes, ran their financial operations with ruthless efficiency. Marcus, a black man who'd grown up in Koreatown and spoke fluent Korean, handled their legitimate business interests. They accepted Luna's presence without question, including her in discussions about Snake Brotherhood movements and asking for her input on translated intelligence. When she suggested a pattern in the intercepted communications that they'd missed, Marcus grinned and said, I told you she was smart, Hyung. Luna felt a flush of pride at being included, at having her skills valued by people who clearly respected each other deeply. This was what belonging felt like, she realized. Not just being tolerated, but being genuinely wanted and needed. The mood shifted when Sujin brought up Luna's background check. "Your grandmother," she said, pulling out a file. "Kim Maylin. We found immigration records." Luna leaned forward, suddenly tense. "What kind of records?" "She came to America in 1953, Sujin continued. "But not as a war bride like we initially thought. She was fleeing something. The records are incomplete, but there are references to her family being targeted during the political upheaval." "Targeted how?" Miho asked. Sujin hesitated. "Her family served as advisors to resistance leaders. When the political situation changed, they were marked for execution. Your grandmother escaped, but she was the last survivor of her line." Luna felt the world tilt slightly. Her grandmother had never talked about Korea except in fairy tales and bedtime stories. She'd never mentioned family, never explained why she came to America so young and alone. "There's more," Sujin said gently. "The advisors your family served, they were called blue-eye seers. Women who were believed to bring clarity and good fortune to warriors and leaders." "The stories," Luna whispered. "Halmoni's stories about blue-eyed women and ancient warriors. They weren't just fairy tales." "Your grandmother was the real thing," Miho said quietly. "And so are you." That afternoon, Luna sat in on her first strategic planning session. Maps covered the conference table in Miho's study, marked with Snake Brotherhood territory and Warang safe houses. The discussion was conducted in rapid Korean, but Luna followed along, occasionally offering translations of intercepted communications. "They're planning something big," she said, studying a series of messages she'd translated. Multiple references to a final push, taking the queen to end the game. "What queen?" Jean asked. Luna looked up to find every eye in the room on her. "Me," she said quietly. "They think if they eliminate me, the Warang will lose their luck and morale will collapse." Miho's expression went deadly calm. "That's not going to happen." The possessive certainty in his voice made Luna's pulse spike, but instead of feeling trapped, she felt protected. Chosen. For the first time in her life, someone was willing to fight for her. "But I don't want to just hide," she said. "I want to help plan our response." The word "our" hung in the air, and Luna realized she'd made her decision without conscious thought. This wasn't temporary safety anymore. This was her choosing a side, choosing a family, choosing him. Miho's eyes met hers across the table, and she saw something shift in his expression. Something that looked like relief mixed with fierce joy. After the others left, Luna found Miho standing on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of salt water and distant rain. "You said our response," he said without turning around. "I did. You're sure about this? About staying? About being part of this world?" Luna moved to stand beside him at the railing. "I've never been sure about anything in my life, but I'm sure about this." Miho turned to face her, and in the dim light from the city below, his expression was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "There are things about me you don't know yet," he said quietly. "Things I've done that might change how you see me." "Like what?" 2 years ago, there was a situation with human traffickers using our territory as a pipeline. We tried negotiating, tried scaring them off, tried everything except violence. Miho's voice was steady, but Luna could hear the pain underneath. "They responded by grabbing 3 teenage girls from families under our protection. What happened? We got the girls back. But in the process, I killed 8 men. Not in self-defense, not in the heat of battle. I tracked them down one by one and executed them." Miho's hands gripped the balcony railing until his knuckles went white. The last one, he was maybe 19 years old. Scared, crying, begging for his life. "I killed him anyway." Luna studied his profile in the city lights, seeing the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders, the careful control in his voice. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "No, and that's what scares me. I should regret taking a life, especially someone so young. But all I can think about is that he'll never hurt another child." Luna reached out and covered his hand with hers. "The trafficked girls, where are they now?" "Safe. One's in college, studying to be a nurse. Another just got married to a boy she met in high school. The third is working at her family's restaurant and saving money to open her own place." "Then you did the right thing." "How can you be sure?" "Because I see who you are," Luna said, turning to face him fully. I see how you take care of Halmoni, how you check on every family in the organization, how you cook me breakfast because you like taking care of me. You're not a killer, Miho. You're a protector who sometimes has to do terrible things to keep good people safe. Miho looked at her with something like wonder. How do you do that? He asked softly. Do what? Make me feel like I might actually deserve something good. Before Luna could respond, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, asking permission. But when Luna melted into him, her arms sliding around his neck, the kiss deepened with desperate hunger. She could taste the coffee he'd been drinking, feel the slight roughness of his 5 o'clock shadow, sense the careful control in his touch even as his mouth devoured hers. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Miho rested his forehead against hers. Are you sure about this? He asked, and Luna could hear the vulnerability beneath the question. I'm sure about you, she said. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Luna felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. This wasn't just attraction or proximity or adrenaline. This was her heart recognizing its other half, choosing this man, this life, this dangerous and beautiful family that had claimed her as their own. When Miho lifted her in his arms and carried her toward the bedroom, Luna felt like she was finally coming home. Later, lying in his arms with the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling, Luna traced lazy circles on Miho's chest and marveled at how right this felt. Every relationship she'd ever attempted had felt like trying to force puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit. This felt like breathing. Miho's phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking the peaceful silence. He reached for it reluctantly, and Luna watched his expression change as he read the message. What is it? She asked, sitting up. They took Mrs. Rodriguez, he said grimly. Your elderly neighbor from Capitol Hill. Left a message saying they'll trade her life for yours. Luna felt ice flood her veins. Mrs. Rodriguez was 83 years old, a sweet woman who brought Luna homemade tamales and worried when she worked too late. We're going to get her back, Luna said firmly. We? Miho's voice was sharp with concern. Yes, we. This is my fault. She's in danger because of me. I'm not hiding while an innocent woman suffers for my choices. Miho studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we planned this carefully. Together. As they began discussing rescue strategies, Luna realized something had fundamentally changed. She wasn't a victim anymore, wasn't someone who needed constant protection. She was a partner, an equal member of this strange family that fought for each other and protected the innocent. She'd spent her entire life looking for a place where her blue eyes didn't mark her as different, where her mixed heritage was a strength rather than a confusion. She'd found it in the most unlikely place imaginable, with a man who looked at her like she was exactly what he'd been searching for his entire life. Now it was time to prove she was worth the faith he'd placed in her. The abandoned fishing warehouse on Harbor Island reeked of decay and desperation. Luna crouched behind a shipping container, her heart hammering as she watched Snake Brotherhood guards patrol the perimeter. Mrs. Rodriguez was somewhere inside that building, an innocent woman caught in a war she didn't understand, and Luna felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her chest. Miho's voice crackled through her earpiece. You don't have to do this. We can handle the rescue without you. No, Luna whispered back. They want me, and they're going to get me. Just not the way they expect. The plan was dangerous, bordering on insane, but it was their best chance of saving Mrs. Rodriguez and ending the Snake Brotherhood's threat permanently. Luna would walk in the front door, playing the terrified victim they expected, while Miho and his team moved in from the back. The psychological impact of her surrender would draw their attention, giving the Warang the element of surprise. What made Luna's stomach churn wasn't the danger to herself. It was the look in Miho's eyes when she'd insisted on participating. She'd seen him face down armed criminals without flinching, but the thought of her walking into that warehouse had reduced him to barely controlled terror. Promise me, he'd said, gripping her hands so tightly she could feel his pulse racing. Promise me you'll run the moment things go wrong. She'd promised, but they both knew she was lying. If this went sideways, she wasn't running anywhere without him. Luna took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the container, walking toward the warehouse in trance with her hands raised. The guards spotted her immediately, shouting in Korean and English, weapons trained on her as she approached. I'm here for the trade, she called out. letting her voice shake with very real fear. Me for Mrs. Rodriguez. The warehouse doors opened, and Luna was roughly escorted inside. The space was vast and dim, filled with the shadows of abandoned fishing equipment and the stench of rotting seaweed. Mrs. Rodriguez sat tied to a chair in the center of the space, conscious but clearly terrified. When she saw Luna, her eyes widened with relief and horror. "Mija, what are you doing here?" She called out in accented English. "You should have stayed away." 20 Snake Brotherhood members surrounded them, weapons drawn, their leader stepping forward with a smile that made Luna's skin crawl. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 20s, with the lean build of someone who'd grown up fighting for everything he had. "The famous blue-eyed luck charm," he said, circling Luna like a predator studying prey. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused us?" "I know you're about to cause yourselves a lot more," Luna replied, meeting his gaze steadily. The leader laughed, but there was something nervous in the sound. His followers shifted restlessly, and Luna realized they were genuinely unsettled by her presence. The old superstitions ran deeper than she'd realized. "You think your eyes make you special?" The leader sneered, but Luna caught the way his gaze skittered away from hers. "Think they'll protect you?" "I think they're the last thing you're going to see," Luna said with a calm she didn't feel. The leader raised his gun, but before he could fire, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, casting everything in blood-red shadows, and chaos erupted. Miho and his team poured through the back in trances like avenging angels, moving with lethal precision in the dim light. Luna dove toward Mrs. Rodriguez, cutting her bonds with the knife Miho had insisted she carry. "Stay down," she whispered to the older woman, helping her toward a pile of fishing nets that would provide cover. But the Snake Brotherhood had been prepared for an assault. What they hadn't expected was Luna's psychological effect on their superstitious foot soldiers. In the red emergency lighting, with shadows dancing across her face, her blue eyes seemed to glow with otherworldly light. The Blue-Eye Seer, one of the younger gang members, whispered in Korean, his voice thick with terror. "She's cursing us." Luna heard the fear in his voice and made a split-second decision. She stood up, walking toward the nearest group of Snake Brotherhood members with deliberate, predatory grace. In the shifting red light, she probably looked like something from their grandmother's warnings about vengeful spirits. "You should have listened to the old stories," she said in perfect Korean, her voice carrying clearly through the warehouse. "Blue-eyed women bring fortune to those they favor, and destruction to those who threaten them." Half the Snake Brotherhood fighters broke and ran. The remaining members rallied around their leader, but the damage was done. Their formation had collapsed, their morale shattered by superstition and Luna's psychological warfare. Miho's team moved through them like a scythe through grain, precise and devastating. Luna found herself face to face with the Snake Brotherhood leader, his gun trained on her chest, his hands shaking with rage and fear. "This ends with you," he snarled. "Yes," Miho's voice said quietly from behind him. "It does." The leader spun around, but Miho moved faster. The confrontation was brutal and brief, ending with the leader on his knees, Miho's gun pressed to his temple. "Your organization is finished," Miho said with deadly calm. "Your territory will be absorbed. Your soldiers can choose to join us or leave the city entirely, and you're going to disappear permanently." The leader looked up at Luna, his face twisted with hatred and something that might have been genuine fear. "You think you've won? This isn't over." Luna met his gaze steadily, and in the red emergency lighting, her eyes seemed to burn with cold fire. "For you it is." Miho pulled the trigger. The aftermath was a blur of police sirens and paramedics checking Mrs. Rodriguez for injuries. The Warang had connections throughout the city government, enough to ensure the official story would reflect self-defense and the elimination of a dangerous criminal organization. Luna sat in the back of an ambulance, a shock blanket around her shoulders, watching Miho coordinate with what appeared to be half the Seattle Police Department. When he finally approached, his expression was carefully controlled, but she could see the lingering terror in his eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands hovering over her, as if checking for injuries he might have missed. "I'm fine." "Mrs. Rodriguez?" "Shaken but uninjured. Her family's already here to take her home." Miho sat beside her on the ambulance bumper, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "What you did in there, using their superstitions against them, that was brilliant." And terrifying, Luna added quietly. I didn't know I could be that cold. Miho cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. You protected an innocent woman and helped end a threat to our community. That's not cold. That's fierce. In the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles, his dark eyes were intense with an emotion that made Luna's breath catch in her throat. I love you, he said quietly. I've been trying to find the right moment to tell you, but watching you walk into that warehouse made me realize there is no right moment. There's only now, and the fact that I would rather die than lose you. Luna felt tears spring to her eyes, not from fear or exhaustion, but from the overwhelming rightness of hearing those words from this man. I love you too, she whispered. I think I have since that first night in the alley, when you looked at my eyes like they were something beautiful instead of strange. Miho kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of relief, and Luna felt something settle into place in her chest. This was it. This was home. Not a place, but a person, a family, a choice to belong somewhere completely. When they broke apart, Jean approached with a respectful bow to both of them. The council wants to meet, he said. They're calling an emergency session tonight. An hour later, Luna found herself once again facing the warring elders, but this time felt completely different. She wasn't a frightened refugee seeking protection. She was a proven member of the family who'd just helped eliminate their greatest threat. The eldest council member stood and bowed formally to Luna, a gesture of respect that made her breath catch in surprise. Blue-eyed Luna, he said in English, his voice carrying the weight of ritual. You have proven yourself a true daughter of the warring. Your courage, your wisdom, your dedication to protecting the innocent, these mark you as worthy of the highest honor we can bestow. He turned to Miho. Do you claim this woman as your equal partner in all things? I do, Miho said firmly. Do you, Luna Park, claim this family as your own, and accept the responsibilities that come with membership? Luna looked around the room at faces that had once seemed foreign and intimidating. Now she saw family members who'd accepted her completely, who valued her contributions, who would protect her as fiercely as she would protect them. I do, she said. Then let it be recorded, the elder said solemnly. Luna Park is recognized as a full member of the Warang family, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. May her blue eyes continue to bring us fortune, and may her courage continue to inspire us all. As the formal ceremony concluded, Luna felt the last of her old insecurities finally melt away. She'd spent 26 years looking for a place where her mixed heritage was a gift instead of a burden, where her unusual appearance marked her as special rather than strange. She'd found it in the most unlikely place imaginable, with a man who loved her exactly as she was and a family that claimed her completely. Walking out of the council chambers with Miho's hand in hers, Luna realized she'd never felt more beautiful, more powerful, or more loved in her entire life. Her grandmother's stories had been true after all. Blue-eyed women did bring fortune to warriors. But the greatest fortune of all was finding where she belonged. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Luna walked through the same streets of Koreatown where her story had begun, but everything had changed. The shopkeepers who once whispered behind her back now bowed respectfully as she passed. The teenagers who used to snicker at her blue eyes now looked at her with something approaching awe. She was no longer the outsider trying desperately to belong. She was Luna Young, wife Tobe of Miho, respected strategist and translator for the Warang, and living proof that sometimes the most unlikely people could find their perfect place in the world. The traditional Korean dress shop buzzed with activity as Mrs. Kim, the elderly proprietor, made final adjustments to Luna's wedding hanbok. The silk was the deepest blue she'd ever seen, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light like stars. It had been Halmoni's idea, choosing blue to honor both Luna's eyes and her grandmother's heritage. You look like a queen, Sujin said, standing behind Luna as she examined herself in the mirror. Or better yet, you look like yourself. Luna smiled at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was confident, radiant, loved. Her blue eyes, once a source of shame and isolation, now seemed to glow with inner light. She'd learned to see herself through Miho's eyes, through the eyes of a family that cherished everything that made her unique. Halmoni entered the shop, moving slowly but with the dignified grace that had carried her through 7 decades of life. She approached Luna with tears in her eyes and a small wooden box in her weathered hands. "These belong to your grandmother," she said softly, opening the box to reveal a pair of silver hairpins decorated with blue sapphires. "I've been keeping them safe, waiting for the right woman to wear them again." Luna's breath caught in her throat. "How did you get these?" "Your Halmoni and I were friends, child, before the war, before we both fled to America. She gave these to me before she died, made me promise to find you someday. She said her granddaughter with the blue eyes would need them when she found her warrior." As Halmoni gently placed the hairpins in Luna's dark hair, Luna felt the presence of the grandmother she'd lost too young, the woman whose stories had kept hope alive in a little girl's heart. "She's proud of you," Halmoni whispered. "You've become everything she hoped you would be." The wedding ceremony took place in the Warang Community Center, transformed with hundreds of white lilies and traditional Korean decorations. The guest list was an eclectic mix of Luna's new family, legitimate business associates, and members of the Korean-American community who'd come to respect the Warang's protection and support. Luna had worried about the cultural complexities of marrying into a traditional Korean family as a mixed-heritage woman, but those fears had proven groundless. The Warang had embraced her completely, not despite her background, but because of it. She represented the future of their community, bridges built instead of walls maintained. Miho waited for her at the altar wearing traditional Korean wedding attire, and when their eyes met across the decorated hall, Luna felt her heart skip several beats. He looked like something out of a fairy tale, dark and handsome and powerful, but more than that, he looked at her like she was his entire world. The ceremony blended Korean traditions with personal touches that honored both families' histories. When they performed the traditional bows to honor their ancestors, Luna felt the presence of everyone who'd come before them, including the brave woman who'd fled Korea 60 years ago with nothing but stories and hope. During the tea ceremony, as they formally introduced Luna to Miho's extended family, the eldest uncle spoke words that made Luna's eyes blur with happy tears. "A blue-eyed daughter has come home to us," he said in Korean, then repeated in English. "She brings honor to our family and strength to our future. May her eyes continue to see clearly, and may her courage continue to guide us all." The reception was unlike anything Luna had ever experienced. Warang families, business leaders, community elders, and local politicians all mingled together, united in their celebration of a match that everyone seemed to recognize as perfect. Luna found herself constantly surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, thank her for her service to the community, or simply tell her how beautiful she looked. But the moment that meant the most came when Mrs. Rodriguez approached, walking slowly but steadily, her face beaming with joy. "Mija," she said, pulling Luna into a fierce hug. "Look at you. Just look at you. Like a princess from one of those fairy tales." "I'm so glad you're here," Luna said, holding the older woman tightly. "Are you sure you're feeling all right?" "Better than all right. That nice boy of yours, he's been checking on me every week, making sure I have everything I need. He's a good man, Luna. A keeper." "I know," Luna said, glancing across the room to where Miho was deep in conversation with Jean and Marcus. He caught her looking and smiled, that soft expression he reserved just for her, and Luna felt warmth bloom in her chest. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Luna found herself standing with Miho on the same balcony where they'd shared their first kiss. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. "Any regrets?" Miho asked, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "About what?" "About choosing this life. This family. Me." Luna leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, breathing in the cologne that had become as familiar as home. "My only regret is that it took so long to find you," she said. "That I spent 26 years thinking I didn't belong anywhere when I was just waiting for the right place to exist." Miho pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you, Mrs. Young." The name sent a thrill through Luna that she was still getting used to. Mrs. Young, Luna Young, a name that marked her as belonging completely, claimed and cherished by this remarkable man and his extraordinary family. 6 months later, Luna sat in her office at the Warang Community Center, reviewing applications for their new mentorship program. Since the wedding, She'd become passionate about helping other mixed-heritage young people navigate the challenges of identity and belonging. The program paired them with successful Korean-American professionals and provided scholarships, counseling, and community support. It was deeply satisfying work, turning her own struggles into tools for helping others. Every young person who found their confidence, who learned to see their mixed heritage as a strength rather than a confusion, felt like a personal victory. Miho appeared in her doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea and wearing the satisfied expression that meant he'd successfully resolved some business problem. "How many applications today?" he asked, setting her tea down and perching on the edge of her desk. 15, including a girl who reminded me of myself at 17. Half Korean, blue eyes, convinced she doesn't fit anywhere. "She will now," Miho said confidently. "She'll have you to show her it's possible." Luna smiled, then paused as a wave of nausea rolled over her. She'd been feeling off for the past week, tired and queasy at odd times, but she'd attributed it to stress from the new program launch. Miho noticed immediately. "Are you feeling sick again?" "I think I might be coming down with something," Luna said, then stopped as a thought occurred to her. A wonderful, terrifying, exhilarating thought. Miho seemed to have the same realization at exactly the same moment. His eyes widened, then grew soft with wonder. "Do you think?" "I don't know," Luna said, but her hand was already moving protectively to her stomach. "It's possible." They stared at each other for a long moment, and Luna saw her own mixture of joy and terror reflected in Miho's expression. "A baby," he said quietly. "Our baby. Half Korean, probably with your eyes or mine," Luna said, then started laughing at the beautiful impossibility of it all. "Can you imagine? A little person who won't have to choose between being Korean or American, who'll grow up knowing exactly where they belong." Miho leaned down to kiss her, soft and reverent and full of promises. "They'll have the best of both worlds," he said against her lips. "And they'll be so loved they'll never doubt it for a second." That evening, Luna walked alone through Koreatown on her way to pick up dinner from their favorite restaurant. The same route she'd taken 3 years ago, when she'd been just another lonely translator trying to disappear into the crowd. But now the shopkeepers called out greetings in Korean and English. Children waved from restaurant windows. Mrs. Park from the flower shop pressed a small bouquet into her hands with a knowing smile and a whispered blessing for new mothers. The community had claimed her as thoroughly as the Warang family had. She wasn't the strange outsider with blue eyes anymore. She was one of them, valued and loved and essential to the fabric of their shared life. Standing at the corner where she'd once hidden in shame, Luna caught her reflection in a shop window. The woman looking back was radiant with happiness, confident in her place in the world, possibly carrying the next generation of a family that had taught her the true meaning of belonging. Her blue eyes, once a source of pain and isolation, now sparkled with joy and purpose. Luna pressed her hand to her still flat stomach and whispered a promise to the child who might be growing there. "You'll never have to wonder where you belong," she said softly. "You'll grow up knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, loved exactly as you are." As she walked toward home, toward her husband and her family and her beautiful, complicated, perfect life, Luna thought about all the people watching this story unfold. Everyone who'd ever felt like an outsider, who'd struggled to find their place in the world, who'd wondered if they'd ever truly belong anywhere. Sometimes, she realized, belonging wasn't about finding a place that accepted you exactly as you were. Sometimes it was about finding people who helped you become exactly who you were meant to be. "What do you think?" Luna asked the evening sky, knowing that somewhere out there, people were listening to her story, maybe seeing pieces of their own journey reflected in hers. "Have you found your place yet? Your people? Your home?" The lights of Koreatown twinkled around her like a blessing, and Luna Young, formerly Luna Park, formerly the girl who didn't belong anywhere, walked home to the family that had made her whole. Her blue eyes had indeed brought fortune to warriors. But the greatest fortune of all was learning that home wasn't a place on a map. It was wherever love lived, wherever you were chosen, wherever you finally, completely, joyfully belonged.